Alright, this is River Civilizations 2, continuing where we left off when we talked about political patterns, religious traditions, how governments were set up for these early civilizations in Mesopotamia. Alright, River Civilizations 2. First thing was economic patterns. We're still not using money at this point, so a lot of things are being done by trade and bartering. When you think of economic, those are the factors which determine the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So what did people want? What things were people able to make? And how they interacted with one another. You had the use of metal, mainly bronze and iron, for tools and weapons, metal was stronger, more durable, and more valuable. And you also had that surplus that was created by the agricultural revolution, which allowed people to specialize, and surplus came from better tools, plows, and irrigation. Increasing trade along rivers and by sea. This was mostly done at this time by the Phoenicians, and they traded with other city-states, which meant the exchange and spread of goods and ideas such as language, religion, science, mathematical concepts, technology, etc. So that's a very important concept to remember. Ideas were traded as well. Development of the world's first cities. Remember, cities were centers of trade with lots of people. You had people coming and going throughout the cities. And most of these cities, again, were along rivers, and river travel was becoming very popular, and so these cities became attractive to traders as well as other nomads looking to settle. We did talk about slavery. Development of the practice of slavery within most cultures in the ancient world took various forms. Enemy soldiers, prisoners, criminals, people who could not pay their debts. So if you were a slave back then, it could be for any number of reasons. Writing. We talked about these are pictograms, which were some of the earliest written symbols, such as like on cave art, back from the Paleolithic age onto the Neolithic. In ancient Egypt, you had hieroglyphics. And you can see they're kind of like pictograms, but a little bit more, maybe not as clearly defined for some of their symbols and what they represent. We also talked about cuneiform, which was from Sumer. And then here we have the Phoenician alphabet, which is very much more looking like our modern alphabet than cuneiform. So the Phoenician alphabet was an evolution that probably had taken centuries to come up with. Some other civilizations in Mesopotamia. You had the Babylonians of Babylonia, or Babylon. And you can see here the Fertile Crescent, Tigris, Euphrates. Babylon is kind of right here as the two rivers kind of come close together. But at one point in time, this whole blue area was controlled by Babylon, or the Babylonians. Lots of war and fighting at this time between civilizations trying to take each other over. You had the Code of Hammurabi, which was the first written set of laws, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So the penalties under Hammurabi's code were very harsh and very severe. And this stone, which was carved in cuneiform with all the laws, was placed in the middle of Babylon, and most people either had someone read it for them or they could read it. And this was kind of the idea that here are the laws, this is what's going to happen. There's really no excuse for you to break the law, especially when you know the outcome. The Babylonians were the first real empire in Mesopotamia after the Akkadians, which we don't get into. And they were known for their hanging gardens and beautiful palaces. Kind of getting ahead of myself here, but here's some more about Hammurabi. Here he is again in this painting, standing in judgment. Here's Hammurabi here. Okay, we'll talk about some of the severity of his laws, since they were the first laws written. Here we are with the Hanging Gardens. This was built by King Nebuchadnezzar for his wife, which took quite a long time to build, but it shows the dedication and the love that he had for his queen. The Gate of Ishtar. So architecture, art was very much reflected in the Babylonian Empire. And this is in a museum, and what they did was they took some of the original materials. It's not the actual Gate of Ishtar, but it's a representation using some of the original materials. Not 100% original, but gives you a good idea of what this thing looked like in terms of design, intricate details, and the idea of, man, this probably took a long time to build. And then the last group today that we're going to talk about are the Assyrians from Assyria. They were a large empire, fierce and cruel warriors, and kind of considered the world's first terrorists. So they were not to be trifled with or messed around with. But pretty much all of these empires, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Phoenicians, again, a lot of fighting was taking place. And a lot of people were killed for that power struggle to take over one civilization for themselves. Now the Assyrians did develop the world's first libraries. And instead of books, okay, as you can see here in the library at Ashurbanipal, they use clay tablets, and these are the shells, if you will, of these libraries. So even though they were mighty warriors, they were also concerned about preserving literature, the things they had written down, etc. They also developed chariots, and the chariot would be a way for obviously using the wheel, but chariots would be another weapon for quick attack against other empires, other civilizations, especially if that civilization did not have chariots or as good of weapons as the Assyrians. And here is the Assyrian Empire. Here's about where Assyria was, and again, over time, they took over this entire region, mainly through the sword, fighting others. And they were considered to be the world's first terrorists. Alright, so that's a wrap for today. Questions, summary, knock those out, especially that summary. It's 25% of your homework grade, or 25 points of your grade. Key points, relationship between farming and specialization. Again, that's something we talked about the first unit, but again, it is an idea that repeats itself and continues to grow as civilization moves forward. Trade and the spread of ideas, and then people and their writing systems. So look over those things, finish your summary. Any questions, write them down, and I will see you guys in the next class.